Hello everyone. In this video, we are going to learn about mergeMap. mergeMap is one of the flattening operators that will help us to map the values from source observables to the inner observables, returning the flattened value. Let's look into an example to understand it. We have a basic index.html file. In here, we are using RxJS version 7. For styling, we are using Tailwind CSS. I've created an empty JavaScript file and the same is referred in here. Hit save. As you can see in the console, nothing yet. Let's close this. For this example, we'll use this URL. Let's save it in a variable, call it as fetch user. This is how the URL looks like. Basically, we are saying that give us the information of the user, which has the ID 1. And it will return a certain dummy user response. And that's in JSON format. Let's now use Ajax creation operator and invoke this API. We'll first start by importing it. Const Ajax. Import it from rxjs.ajax. Let's create our observable. Const user observable equals ajax.getJSON and pass the URL. Then we'll create our observer. Const observer equals, let's only have the next notification and we'll log the value. Console.log, just append a string to it, value. Finally, the subscription mechanism. User observable dot subscribe and pass in the observer. Hit save. As you can see, we get the JSON data that has certain information about the user. Now let's assume that there's an array of user IDs that maybe we receive from an observable which talks to an API and retrieves it. However, for now, for this example, we'll just have these IDs returned from the from creation operator. So something like this. Const user IDs equals from, let me import from, const from, we'll import it from RxJS. And in here, we have array of IDs. Let's have some dummy IDs from 1 to 3. Cool. Now, for each of these IDs, we want to get the user information. Right now, what we did was, we had this hard-coded user ID, isn't it? And it get the information for the ID 1. But now I want that for each of these user IDs, we fetch this information. So let's try it out. We will kind of remove this one because we don't need the hard-coded ID. And we are not going to subscribe to user object, rather the user IDs. So we'll have, I'll also remove this one for now. Maybe I can just comment it out. Okay, this is our source observable that retrieves the IDs. Just assume from another API call or so. User IDs dot subscribe. If I just do subscribe and pass the observer, we're going to reuse the same observer here. Hit save. We'll see the next notification with the IDs 1, 2, and 3, right? But we don't want this. Instead, we want the Ajax request being made. So let's write dot pipe. Let's try with map. Okay, we'll use map. Let me import the same. It will receive the ID, and then for each ID, we'll make the Ajax request. Ajax.getJSON fetch user. That's the URL. Let me call it as URL. Right? That makes sense. Yeah. Fetch URL. Then we'll pass the ID that we would have received from here. Plus ID. Hit save. Now, as we might have expected, we won't get the user information, isn't it? But rather the observable that will be returned from the Ajax operator. Because unless you subscribe to it, we are not getting the user information. So to help us solve this problem, we'll use the flattening operator And we'll start with the mergeMap. Let's import mergeMap. And in here, we can replace map by mergeMap. Hit save. Awesome. As you can see, now we get the user information. Rather than getting the observable, we get the user information, which is what we want in here. Right? Now, if we do a refresh, okay, do you observe any difference from the previous and this response? If not, let me just do a refresh again. You see the responses in here? Okay. As you might have observed that, though via the from creation operator, we are sending the values 1, 2, and 3, which are the IDs, but the response received are not in this order, are they? Here the ID is 2, then 3, then 1, and every time I do a refresh, the order is not guaranteed. Here it is 1, 2, 3, do a refresh again, 2, 3, 1. The order is not guaranteed, and that's just how mergeMap works. When you use mergeMap, the order is never guaranteed. As the value is emitted, the mergeMap maps each of these values to the inner observable, which in our case is the Ajax creation operator. mergeMap allows multiple Ajax observables to be subscribed simultaneously. And as and when the inner observable emits the data, our observer will receive the data as it is. Let's head to the slide to understand it a bit better. So we have an observable that emits values using the from creation operator. We also have an observer subscribed to this source observable. The source observable emits the value 1. mergeMap maps this value to an inner observable, which makes an HTTP request using Ajax to fetch the data. While the first Ajax request is being processed, the source observable emits another value, say 2. mergeMap maps this value to another inner observable and starts processing it concurrently. Both inner observables are now processed simultaneously. The first Ajax request might complete before the second one, and that depends on the response time. As soon as the first inner observable completes and emits a value, this value is then received by the observer. Meanwhile, the second inner observable is still processing. When the source observable emits a third value, mergeMap maps this to yet another inner observable. This new request is processed concurrently now with the second inner observable. Since all these inner observables are active at once, the order in which they emit values can vary. For example, here it can so happen that the third Ajax request completes before the second one, and thus the observer might receive the value from the third request before the value from the second. Finally, the second inner observable also completes, and thus the observer will receive this value as well. Thus the output could be 132, or in our case it was also 231, right? It all depends on when the inner observables complete. The key point to note here is that the mergeMap will process all the inner observables concurrently. So the order of the emission of these values is never guaranteed. I hope this slide helps you clarify how mergeMap works. So that's it. That's all about mergeMap. Do remember 3 key pointers about mergeMap. mergeMap maps each value emitted from the source observable to the inner observable and flattens them into a single stream. Just what we saw, there were 2 observables, right? From and Ajax. mergeMap combined them into one and returned the flattened value. Next, all inner observables run simultaneously. And thus the third point, the order is never guaranteed. That's it for this video. Thank you. Meet you in the next one. Until then, happy coding.